Welcome, Quinn. I'm now speaking with Quinn Kelly of NYU Tisch School. So excited that you're here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, so let's just dive right into it. Like, why did you choose musical theater as a major in college? You know, people would say that's not very practical, Quinn. So, but I am very glad there are people out there who are committed to art. So just, yeah, tell us more about it.
So I think it all started in high school when I was in the high school productions. I did one in particular my sophomore year that really made me feel like that was my passion and what I wanted to pursue. And I've always had a really supportive family who would always tell me to follow my passions because it's no fun to go to school for 4 years for something that you're not passionate about. So I did have to do a lot of thinking about what's practical versus what I wanted to do. But ultimately, this is what really drew me in and really was where all my passion lied. So
Mhm.
what I ended up doing.
Well, and I mean, I'll just put in a plug here that the careers you go into are much more flexible than people realize. I mean, for example, of a colleague of mine, or her major in college was performance flute. So you never know which direction you'll end up in. So, which I think
Yeah.
is great. Yeah. So let's kind of dig into it. I think one of the things that's very confusing for students when I talk to them, students and parents, like they'll say, I'll get on the phone with someone and they'll say, I want to major in musical theater. And I'll say, okay, do you want a Bachelor of Arts, or a Bachelor of Fine Arts in musical theater? And they won't even know that there's a difference or what that difference is. So I'm hoping you could kind of explain the difference and talk about why. I think you're in a BFA program, correct?
I'm actually in a BM program, so I can
Okay,
explain all the differences. I have a
that,
few notes about it also because I
that
know it
would
can
be
be
great.
a
See,
little
like
bit.
a whole new thing. So yeah, tell me about the difference between a BFA, a BA, and a BM.
Okay, so a BA is a Bachelor of Arts, and that's what a lot of liberal arts degrees are. They're just a BA. And
Mm-hmm.
so you take a lot of core classes like math, science, history, English, a lot of those classes that you're used to taking in high school, but you take them at a college level. A BFA is a Bachelor in Fine Arts, which focuses on an intensive track of theater or visual arts. So you can get a BFA in theater or you can get a BFA in some other visual art program. So they have a lot of those in the Tisch School. I'm actually in NYU Steinhardt, where I have a Bachelor of Music. And the Bachelor of Music is specifically focused on a musical instrument. And my concentration is voice, which they consider an instrument at NYU Steinhardt. And so, yeah, those are kind of some of the differences.
Okay. All right. So I apologize for getting that wrong. I don't know where I got that information, but I really appreciate you setting me straight.
Yeah,
Uh,
that is totally fine. And especially because there's so many different music programs and different schools, it can be very confusing at NYU. So you're totally good.
okay. All right. Well, thank you. All right. So tell me, like, what is a typical day or week like in a BM program? So a bachelor's of music.
Yeah. So in any kind of conservatory specialized program, you're going to have very packed schedule. I took 14 classes my freshman year, and I only took 12 classes this past semester, starting into my sophomore year. And next semester, I'll be taking 10 classes. So it's a lot of class time, a lot of being present and really working on your craft. But really, there's no homework. You just have to make sure to show up because ultimately they just want you to be there so that you can practice, you can get feedbacks, you can interact with your peers and your instructors because that's ultimately what's going to help your instrument and your voice the most.
Do you take any, I mean, I know you're not getting a Bachelor of Arts, so you're not in a liberal arts setting per se, but do you take English courses? Do you take any of those courses, just fewer of them, or how does that part of it work?
Yeah, I do. So at NYU Steinhardt, they have anybody who's taking a musical course is also taking a liberal arts core. And so I take, in the span of my 4 years, I'll take four core classes. So one history, one English, one science, one math. And then if
Mhm.
have AP credits, some of those can transfer over as well. And then you'll have more time for electives if you choose to do so.
Mhm. And with those electives, are most of those going to be primarily within Steinhardt, or can you take some of them within like NYU's liberal arts and sciences if you want to, like, I don't know, take a bio class for fun, for example?
Yeah, so I think that NYU is pretty flexible just in general because it's such a big school and they want you to do as many things as you want to do while you're there. So I think that they are pretty flexible about cross educating in different schools. And so I'm taking communicative sciences and disorders class next semester, which is called Anatomy and Physiology of the Speech and Hearing Mechanism, which I was really personally interested. Being a vocal major, I think it's important to know what my instrument looks like, how it works. And so I get to take one of those classes, which, although it's not an elective, it counts for my science class. It's still really cool that I can take that class, even though it's in their CAS program, the College of Arts and Sciences. But I can still have the opportunity to take that class because they're pretty flexible about wanting to branch out and make sure you get all the information that you want or desire while you're at the school.
Mm-hmm. So circling back, I just want to kind of go back to your classes. Like when you were doing 14 different classes, it sounds like you didn't have homework, but you'd probably be in school like from 9 to 5 or something similar to that. Is that accurate? Is that kind of what it would look like?
Yeah, so personally, I'm a morning person. So I would rather take an 8 a.m. than a 5 p.m. class. So my usual schedule is an 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. day. So some of my classes this past semester was song analysis, acting, dance classes. What else did I have? You have one voice lesson per week where you meet with a private instructor to go over personal things that you're working on. So, and personal repertoire. So
Mm-hmm.
those are a few of them.
And then are you in shows as well? I mean, when does that start? Because I assume that there are performances and so tell me about when that gets built into and how that works as part of your schedule.
Yeah, of course. So that any kind of show that you do is going to be outside of your normal school class schedule. So you have to plan out your day and schedule time to go to rehearsals or go to extra rehearsals really. So next semester I'll be in a dance recital for the master's dance education program at NYU Steinhardt, which is a really cool opportunity. So they let you audition for things outside of your school. So not outside of your school, excuse me, outside of your program. So
Mm-hmm.
although the dance education program isn't something that I'm currently in, I got to audition for it because they do a really good job of advertising and making a lot of different types of shows, a lot of different kinds of ways to perform. They make all that information available to students through email, through bulletin boards. We have an online bulletin board for my personal program that they post a lot of information. So there are a lot of different ways you can be in shows, and it's not just the traditional musical or not just the traditional showcase that a lot of schools often do one per semester.
Mm-hmm. I found it interesting too what you said about that there's a lot of different ways to perform. So I would imagine that most of these programs, even if your specialty is voice, that they want you to have multiple skill sets that you can bring, even if your specialty is voice. Is that accurate?
Yes, very accurate. We take one dance class per semester in my program. And obviously, we're also taking acting classes in conjunction to our vocal studies classes. And if you want to do musical theater, you have to intertwine all three. You have to be a triple threat, is what they say.
Mm-hmm.
So they really want to prepare you for being able to have all those skills that have the best,
Mm-hmm.
you'll have the best skills to succeed when you go out into the real world and start auditioning.
A friend of mine who is no longer acting, but did act for a while after she graduated and managed to make a living at it. She said that when like she had quite a good voice as well and had trained a lot. And then she also loved acting. That was her favorite thing. But she said she had a lot of discomfort with dance. So that was the part that was challenging for her. but most of the other actors, their challenge was with voice, but they were comfortable with dance. So it was just kind of interesting for me to hear about that. And it really emphasized for me that if a student wants to do one thing, they need to push themselves to be good at these others as well.
Yeah, and I think that in my program, it's a really comforting environment, and everyone's just trying to help you do your best, no matter what your specialty is or what the more challenging thing for you is. Everybody, teachers, peers, everybody there is just wanting you to succeed and try new things and really push yourself to be the best performer you can be.
Well, that is wonderful to hear, because I hear that some of the schools are not supportive, that some of the schools are a little bit cutthroat. And I just think that's such a shame. Just because the field itself is competitive doesn't mean that the school needs to be unfriendly, right?
Yeah, and I think that I had a lot of concerns going into a program of this sorts with such strict rules and so many classes, and it feels so overwhelming. And having that competitive nature is always going to be part of the field, but I
Mhm.
think it's also important to find the people and the instructors, and you want to surround yourself with the people that are going to help you, not crush you down.
Mhm.
So it's something that I found really important about this program that makes it really special.
Okay, all right. So we have a really nice recommendation here for NYU Steinhardt's as a supportive place. So that's good to know. From your observation, because it sounds like you probably interact with people from Tisch, would you say that they find it similar as far as you can tell?
I think that it's a little bit more competitive at Tisch. And what I understand from the people that I know who are in the Tisch acting program, I don't personally know anyone in the Tisch musical theater program, but they find that it's more competitive, but they feel that the person that I know personally feels that they thrive in that environment and are
Mhm.
also really happy to be in that kind of program. So
Mhm.
she really loves NYU Tisch and loves being there and acting and feeling like it's a little bit competitive, but how that kind of competitive spirit pushes her to do even better in her acting. So I
Mhm.
think that it's a personal thing, but also I think the NYU Tisch is a little bit more competitive from
Mhm.
what I hear, at least.
Okay. So competitive, but not ridiculous. And I
Yeah.
think, as you said, the match is so important for some students. Maybe they'd want a place that was gentler. For other students, they're not going to be happy in that environment and they're going to want some of that competition. So I think this is great information. All
Yeah.
right, so let's talk about kind of the selectivity of these programs. It's in my position as a college counselor, it's always challenging for me to advise people, because I worked at a school where you were admitted based on your academics. Certainly your extracurriculars mattered, but portfolio was not relevant. I mean, it was in terms of like, wow, this is great. This student has really committed themselves to something, but they could have been supremely untalented and it wouldn't have mattered to us. What would have mattered was their transcript. So kind of talk about what your application process was for a bachelor's in music.
Yeah, of course. So I personally applied for 14 schools, which I think was a bit excessive, but during the time of COVID and a little bit post COVID, it was easier to audition for more schools because they were over Zoom. So I didn't have to travel anywhere to do my auditions, which was really helpful for me. Usually when you audition for a school, they'll ask you to come in for your audition and fly to the school, and they'll do an audition process in person. So the normal amount of schools for somebody going into an arts major is about 8 to 10. I would say that's about normal for how many you should apply to, especially because they are more selective. So you want to give yourself a wider range of things that might accept you. So the first part of the process is to send in a preliminary audition, which is where you're just sending in videos of yourself. And then if you get past that part, they'll do a callback, which is where then that's when you would go in for your in-person audition. Mine was an in-person over Zoom audition because of the times that it were. And I know that some schools are sticking with that method to save students money, and also because it's easier to do things over Zoom sometimes than trying to schedule rooms and trying to schedule it's just a lot of logistics. So once the preliminaries are over, you'll get a call back and then you'll go in for your in-person audition or your Zoom audition. And then after that, they'll send you an email based on how they think you did. And then that will be your acceptance or not.
Mm-hmm. And did they indicate to you that any other, like anything beyond the audition was important in the process, at least for NYU, or was it really kind of mostly just the audition?
For for every single audition that I did at all schools, you find all of the information on the website, which it's really hard to navigate college websites sometimes. So I would recommend personally going into Google and searching exactly the title of the program that you're interested in and then the school name, instead of trying to go to the school's website and then try and find programs. It's a lot harder that way. And then usually under the information about that program for the school, it'll say all the audition stuff, all the preliminary stuff. Then if you get past the preliminary stage, it'll tell you what you need for an audition. So for some schools, I submitted dance, music, and a monologue. For some schools, I only did a monologue and my musical audition. Some schools required sight singing, which they did just in the actual in-person audition, but they let you know that sight singing was required before you went into the audition. So it's really so school-based that it's hard to say, but I would say that's some of the things you can expect.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think your advice of sending students to the website is very, very good advice,
Yeah.
because it's all there. I mean, I actually think it can be a really good idea for students, even when they're deciding on programs, like research very deeply what they're requiring to see if, because that's one of the ways, one of many, to find out if a school is a match for you. So,
Yeah.
okay. All right. Well, we've pretty much run out of time, but thank you so much for being on the show. Just so everybody
Yeah,
knows,
of course.
technical difficulties kept us from having Quinn on a couple of months ago. But she very generously came back and spent time with us in spite of being an extremely busy student. So thank you so much, Quinn. I really learned a lot.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. And just one more website that I found out super recently. It's called the College Audition, founded by Tim Ivanicki. Sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. But you can go to thecollegeaudition.com and he has a lot of programs for people that are looking to audition for music programs. And so I would highly recommend him. Wish that I would have worked with him. It looks like he has a lot of good stuff for people looking into music programs.
Okay. All right. Great.
Yeah.
All right. All right. So join us next week when we'll be talking about the California state system of higher education. Everybody knows about the UCs, but the Cal States are really good options too. And definitely join us on February 2nd when we'll be reviewing 8 years of this podcast. That'll be Beth, Ian, Shannon Vasconcelos, and I. And finally, I want to remind you that you don't have to listen to our shows live. Every show is accessible 24/7 on the Voice America website. And we're here live every Thursday. Well, we're not live, actually recorded, but the show is released every Thursday, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. So check us out.